Good morning, everyone. Josh with Severe Weather. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday so far. We are going to spend a lot of time looking at the tropics, and we're also going to talk about some more severe weather and flooding, as well as building heat next week across the United States. Very busy a severe weather day again yesterday, especially flooding in Kentucky. Mayfield, which was hit by the December 2021 tornado, took it very hard yesterday. Graves County, Kentucky. My prayers are with all these folks because I can't even imagine what it's like to get hit by a tornado, then have to rebuild, and then deal with a catastrophic flood. So if you're watching from that area, or you have family in that area, just know that you guys are on my minds. Same for North Carolina. We had a rare EF3 tornado north of Rocky Mount. That's about an hour east of me in Raleigh. On a day that was in a marginal risk, but just enough wind shear for a quick storm to pop up and very quickly turn into a strong tornado. And you just don't see that very often. So it just goes to show you that we really just need to be prepared for anything, because in some cases, forecasts are not going to pick up on these little freak occurrences, or something may get going and very quickly turn badly. Unfortunately, that's just the times we live in with the weather. And, it caught me off guard. I know it caught everybody in the storm off guard, but we need to be prepared just in case. I think that is the overall feeling that I'm getting from what happened yesterday. So anyway, let's talk tropics here for the next few minutes. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we'll start in the Atlantic because that's where probably most of you are concerned. This is Tropical Storm Dawn, and it has strengthened a little bit, but is not a threat to land. It's actually going to continue to move off to the northwest and then turn right and weaken before it gets anywhere close to Newfoundland. Actually, it should stay east of Newfoundland towards the weekend. We are going to keep an eye on a pair of waves, though, next week that are tracking towards the Caribbean. And right now, no immediate concern, no big threat to worry about. Forecasts, obviously, when we get beyond a few days, start getting more uncertain. But models are starting to show some potential development down the road, perhaps as soon as the end of the weekend for this first wave. And then later on next week for another wave that's going to come off of Africa. So I'm going to dive into that first, show you the current map. This is the area of concern that is south of the Cape Verde Islands. A very low chance it's going to do anything over the next few days. It's fighting dry air. It's fighting some wind shear. But when it gets into the kind of the central main development region and eventually closer to the islands, and that's probably going to be about 4, 5, 6 days off. So later this weekend, it may finally get into some sort of an environment where something could slowly develop. So we're not talking a high-end tropical system, probably a depression or low-end storm, maybe approaching the islands here, and that's going to be about 7 days away. So we have a week to watch. Again, the conditions are somewhat hostile for anything to form, but they are expected to gradually become a little bit better here. Not shown on the map is another wave behind it that some models are going to be picking up on, and I'll get to that in a little bit. This is a current look here, and you can see there's nothing in the Gulf to be concerned with, nothing in the Western Atlantic, and certainly nothing in the Caribbean. We see a huge pocket of dry air south of Tropical Storm Dawn over here. In the Pacific, one area that we're going to keep an eye on that doesn't look like it's going to take much time to develop here if it does. But really a pretty quiet look here for the time being. Now off the Eastern Atlantic, here's the first wave that we're watching. Let me pull up my pen so I can show you guys. But this is kind of the area that we're watching right now, and you can see there's a massive area of dry air off to the north and west of it, and that is hindering any kind of development. However, when it gets past this region into here, about 50 west, it may have a better chance to develop, especially if it continues on a far southern track here. This wave behind it may or may not develop, but we'll keep an eye on it. There's actually another one behind that some models are picking up on as well. So again, a ways off before we look at any kind of threats. You can see this is a look at all the dry air in place. See these waves that are coming across. Let me see if I can pull up my screen again. This is the wave that we're watching right here. There's just a huge area of dry air in place. A lot of this is African dust between Dawn right here and this wave. And by the time it gets over here, it may start to finally release itself from the dry air in place. We're going to have what's called a Kelvin wave, which is going to add more instability. Now, the models a few days ago, especially the GFS, showed this developing a lot faster than it looks like it will. So because it's not going to develop very quickly, it's more than likely going to continue west into the Caribbean. And we know storms this time of the year, when they get down there, unless they're already strong, have a very low chance of developing. If anything, they're going to die. However, that may pave the way for the next wave. So it may be kind of the sacrificial lamb, if you want to think of it that way. So that's what we're watching. Here's Dawn, and definitely looks healthier than it did yesterday. 50-mile-per-hour winds. Definitely a tropical storm now, but no threat to land. So it may look kind of pretty, but it's just a name at this point. Going to continue until about the end of the weekend before it reaches cooler waters and becomes extra tropical, and then recurves off to the right before threatening any sort of land. Winds are 50 miles per hour. The intensity, these are the models, by the way, well behaved. They all agree on that turn. And the intensity forecast shows some gradual intensification just for about the next day. And then we get to Friday night and Saturday, things level off. And then over the weekend, and especially early next week, we should see a weakening trend. So unlikely we're going to have our first hurricane this year. Let's take a look, though, at probabilities coming up. This is Dawn right here. And you can see the GFS ensemble says that nothing is likely to develop down in here. So the GFS, which had that wild solution last week that maybe tried to bring things up towards Florida, has pretty much backed off on that. Here's the operational model. You can see Dawn out here. It is going to weaken. You can see there's somewhat of a semblance of slow development here this weekend, kind of maybe a depression at this point. The pressures are still high, but this is Saturday night. And then as this moves Sunday, you can see it's kind of weak at this point. Maybe a low-end tropical storm by the time it gets over here towards Barbados. That would be next Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. And then as it heads into the Caribbean, we're already losing kind of that possibility of it staying named. Behind it, it does not have the next wave developing. So it says high pressure takes over and we're looking pretty quiet, which is crazy because if you look back just 3 days ago, you saw this thing developing very quickly into a named system here. So just the GFS has this bias where it seems to ignore the dry air in place and just ramps things up very quickly. And I am going to mention it. I'm going to show these solutions just to show you that, if we take everything literally here, we're just going to scare ourselves into a frenzy. But if we just wait and see what happens, then we realize that this model is just a little bit insane sometimes when it comes to longer term development. So we'll take a look at the ensemble tracks, and you can see this is going to be on Saturday morning here. Yes, they all show this system here as a higher pressure system, so a tropical depression probably. There is one solution that does take it up here towards the Leeward Islands, towards Puerto Rico, but even then it's weakening. Everything else is low rider here. It's just continuing and then dying off. Now there's another system behind it that some of the ensembles do try to develop here. This is going to be next weekend. And we see a couple solutions do go a little bit farther north. And really the only way we are going to see a better defined chance for development is if these systems do head in the northern direction. But the first one's going too far south, it looks like. The next one may or may not develop depending on which model you like. Now the European's a little bit different here, and interestingly, the European is typically the more conservative of the two models. However, it is showing that there is a chance, even a 50% chance, that we may have a depression here by the beginning of next week. You can see that as it heads towards Barbados. This is next Tuesday into Wednesday. There's a chance, but then as it gets in here to the Western Caribbean, that chance you can see continues to lessen and lessen. There's actually something behind it, interestingly. That's this next wave, that it has a better chance of development. And if I take you to just a one-day probability, not a whole longer-term probability, you can kind of see that we may have a depression or a low-end storm here next Wednesday in the Eastern Caribbean, followed by another one here next Wednesday. And again, the farther off in the time you get, the lower the chances are for development. And that is just based on the fact that you have a lot of ensembles running and a lot of different possible solutions. But I try to go off of probabilities where things may form. And you can see the first system is likely heading, if it survives, towards Central America. The next one is a little bit farther north, and this may be the one that we have to keep a closer eye on after the first one gets out of the way, because now we have more moisture in place. We're starting to eat away at that dry air layer that's in place here, and we have a little bit more of a northerly track. So I'll show you the European model here. You can see here's our first system. And this is later this weekend, and it's low end. It's kind of falling apart, moving through the Windward Islands, and then that's really it. Behind it, you can kind of see there's potentially going to be another system here, but this is, again, very low end. But farther to the north, you can kind of see here next weekend that there may be something that's aimed more at the Northern Islands. This would be a bigger concern, in my opinion, but this is 10 days away and it's just way too soon to make a call. So I'm doing these videos because I think you guys just need to see potential out there, but I don't want people freaking out at this point because this is way into the future. In tropical land, when you go beyond 4 or 5 days, the skill for forecasting something is extremely low. And all the models can agree on something and they can all be wrong. We've seen that happen in science many times. So again, not a scare video, just, hey, I think it's time to just show you what's going on out there and where we may see things form. And then as we get closer to that time frame, we can start kind of fine tuning it and then getting more of a handle on what may happen. But until we get development, that's going to still be just a very kind of uncertain forecast. So here's the first system here on the European. And again, for the most part, we're looking at a low rider. We do have a few ensembles that do show this being kind of a stronger solution here south of Puerto Rico. This would be next Thursday, so about a week beyond. And then here's the system behind it. So yes, there are some ensemble members on the European, not the GFS, which is usually the one that goes gangbusters, but the European that does say this survives into the Western Caribbean or even north of Cuba. Beyond that, of course, speculation as to where it might go, generally speaking towards Belize or towards Honduras, but a couple solutions are closer to Cuba. The next system, though, you can see obviously less clustering here, kind of more of a spread. But generally speaking, a little bit farther north, and in some cases, much farther north, and nothing too intense according to what I'm seeing on these pressures here. We're looking at over 1,000, but if something gets up into this region here towards the beginning of August, then we definitely will be looking at maybe more of a threat, but nothing is definite. So again, just wanted to show you those possible solutions. In the Pacific, something interesting here, we've got an invest. It has not developed yet. You can see still a lot of disorganization here, but this, according to a lot of our models, very well in about 2 or 3 days could very rapidly intensify east of the Philippines. And some solutions take it across northern Luzon towards China, but the majority of our solutions now threaten the eastern part of Taiwan, maybe all the way up to Shanghai and also Okinawa and possibly South Korea and Western Japan. So this is what we'll be watching for our next potential big storm in the world at this point. And you can see on this tropical model, this is Friday morning, and it doesn't really look like it's intensifying. And then we get to the weekend and pressures start dropping. 997, that's a tropical storm. And then 984 on Saturday. This would be Sunday, Philippine time. And then pressures very quickly drop Sunday into Monday down to the 930s and 920s, which would be super typhoon status. This is our HAFS tropical model. This is the one that I tend to look at more and more because this is specifically designed for tropical genesis. And it's got a major cyclone here east of Taiwan and southwest of Okinawa here next Tuesday. So that's what I'll be watching for you guys in the tropics. Back to the States here, big time heat in the Southwest. Phoenix had its warmest daily average temperature on record yesterday. I think the high was 119. And you can't pay me enough to have to move out there. North Carolina gets hot, but nothing like that. We have heat warnings as well across Northeast Texas, right on into Arkansas, Western Mississippi. We'll have triple digit heat. Flash flood watches over portions of the Northeast once again, certainly across this area that's gotten hit from Illinois over into Tennessee and Kentucky. And we have a new area to watch for flooding over eastern Colorado and western Kansas as well. And you can see we are going to have a disturbance in Utah and Colorado that will activate and bring severe weather and very heavy rain into this region later on. We also have a disturbance moving through Kansas and Oklahoma that is going to activate more storms in the same places today over Missouri, western Tennessee, western Kentucky, and downstate Illinois. And here's our cyclone moving across Lake Superior. That will likely light up storms over the Midwest and eastern Great Lakes today. Some of them will be severe potentially, and that will head into the Northeast here by tomorrow. We're watching this front, this area over Tennessee, which could bring severe weather into the Carolinas later today. I think Rocky Mount will avoid this, but maybe down towards Myrtle Beach and into the PD River basin here, we have to watch for some severe weather. But the deep south, look how dry aloft things are. It's going to take a lot to get storms going. We're just looking at a day of nasty heat. Here's our enhanced risk area, severe weather, Colorado into northwestern Oklahoma. Slight risk area basically along our front here over the eastern lakes, right through the Ohio Valley and down into South Carolina. We are likely looking at a decent chance to see a few tornadoes, but certainly severe wind and hail as well. Big chance for hail here over portions of the central and southern plains. Wind, that is, and hail across the eastern Great Lakes. And this is a zoomed in view of our enhanced risk. And you can see widespread severe wind over 74 miles per hour will be a possibility across this region here later today into the night tonight. Tomorrow, no slight risk area, but we'll watch for locally severe storms across the mid-Atlantic, as well as parts of the southeast and the high plains. And then as we get to Saturday, the deep south has the best chance of severe weather. Rare to see this July a day or two with no slight risk, so I think an upgrade could come. I find it hard to believe we're not going to have some severe weather, but right now the organization is still a little bit difficult to figure out. Here's our flood risk as well. And unfortunately, more flooding is a possibility here across the Tennessee Valley and the mid-Mississippi Valley, and certainly back in the high plains. We also have a threat for locally heavy rain over parts of Pennsylvania, New York, and Ohio. As we get to tomorrow, unfortunately, in the Northeast, we have more flooding possible from basically Delaware and eastern Maryland right on up into southeastern Canada, and also across parts of New Mexico and parts of the Mid-South. As we get to Saturday, the chances for flooding start dropping farther south, and then over the weekend start shifting back into the north and east here. Here's a look at potential rainfall totals today over Colorado into northwest Oklahoma. And the forecast has 2 to 3 inches of rain. There will be a possibility of 6 or more of those somewhere in this area. Maybe it's northwestern Oklahoma tonight into tomorrow morning. We also have a threat for some heavy rain in the northeast, especially tomorrow. Look at some of these totals. Again, 1 to 3 inches in the Delaware River Valley. We just had a big round of flooding here a few days back. Now we're looking at more, unfortunately, as we get into Friday and Saturday. And here's a look at the HRRR model. It shows you the severe weather threat growing across Michigan and northern Indiana and Ohio here. This is 5 o'clock Eastern. Also in northwestern PA, this is 6, 7. We may have a tornado or two across Ontario again. And then everything drops south and east this evening. And our best chance for severe weather, I believe, is going to be between 7 and 10 o'clock here around the Lake Erie region and across northwestern PA. More storms tomorrow into the northeast. They should fire up here behind this first system over the Delaware and Hudson valleys here. This is about 3 in the afternoon, then into New England here towards late in the afternoon and evening hours tomorrow again. So very active. In the south and east, we are going to see additional showers and storms moving across the same portions here. Very heavy rain, but it's moving faster for us over western Kentucky and Tennessee. This is lunchtime today. And then moving into the Carolinas late in the afternoon. This is 8 o'clock hitting Charlotte, and then this evening over South Carolina. We see additional storms moving across the Tennessee Valley and then a little bit farther south and east, and they weaken. Additional storms tomorrow, though, across parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. Some of these could be severe, and we certainly could see some heavy rain as well. And back in the plains, I'm going to try to speed things up here. We see big time storms over Colorado around 6 o'clock this evening, and then moving into Kansas and Oklahoma between 7 and 11, and even overnight towards Oklahoma City. This will move into Arkansas and Mississippi, and we have to keep an eye on things. I would not be shocked if we saw severe weather in the Delta region tomorrow afternoon. Behind it, another round of storms over New Mexico and the Front Range of Colorado, and a few storms over Nebraska and Kansas. There could be some severe weather with these as well. Temperatures today are going to be hot, upper 90s across much of the deep south, mid 90s in the Carolinas, cooler across the mountains where we have more cloud cover. Record highs possible in southeast Louisiana as well as East Texas. We are looking at that heat again across Texas. This is a broken record. It's been just so hot. The Southwest is going to be blazing hot. El Paso up to 109 today. Here's a look at tomorrow, and you can see we are looking at just more record heat, especially around Houston. 101 is possible. This is Saturday. And then Sunday and Monday, we see this heat building north and east. And by the middle of next week, we are looking at Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, all heading in the direction of where we could have record heat towards the second half of next week. I actually talked about this about 10 days ago on my videos, but now the heat is going to expand. And I do believe the beginning of August will be quite hot across the Midwest and into the Great Lakes region as we get the heat of the summer. That's all this heat that's in the Southwest, the same high pressure region builds north and eastward. So it takes some time. We've got to get the block to move out that's producing the cooler weather over eastern Canada and central Canada. But once that moves out, all this heat here does have a place to expand. So fortunately, it is going to cool off some here next week across the Southwest. And this is more typical heat. It's still very hot. 120 in Death Valley is still very hot, but we're not as much above average. So our departures are dropping. So, if you're in this area, please find ways to keep cool. Try to avoid being out during the heat of the day. Heat exhaustion and heat stroke and heat illness are very much a real thing, and that's unfortunately going to continue to be a threat here into August. Thank you all so much for your time today. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. Again, in the tropics, the goal is not to freak people out, just to get them thinking about what could be happening in the next several weeks. And that's really what I feel like is kind of my gift, is to just look into the longer range and forecast for you guys and do my very best, sharing the data that's relevant to you so that if you're planning trips in the next couple of weeks, you at least have an idea. Please consider subscribing. We also have a membership, and if you want more detailed forecasting, if you do have a trip coming up or you want a faster response, I recommend that you become a member. It's about 33 cents a day. I will prioritize my limited time in responding to those folks. So it's just a little bit of money, but it does help support me and helps me to grow my reach here. My goal is to get to 10,000 supporters and followers before the end of the year 2023. And it's not really to make money so much as it is for me to share my gift to you guys. And also because God has called me as a Christian man to just testify amongst you guys that I am a Christian, and God has me doing this as a gift to you guys because we've all been created by God and we've all been given a special gift. This happens to be mine. But for those of us who do believe not only that God created us, but that he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for us, that we will be given eternal life, John 3:16, that we have a very special gift and a very special calling. Romans 8:28 says, and we know that all things work together for the good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. And that is my mantra, Romans 8:28, that good things will happen. Now it's kind of a conditional promise. It has two parts. God works all things for good. And a lot of folks, appreciate that because they see the goodness in God. They see the difference that he has made in our lives. However, there is a big condition. There is a string attached to this, and that's for those who love him and who have been called for his purpose. We have all been created by God, and he has shown us all love, but not all of us choose to love back. It's a one-sided relationship. And I'm not here to judge you guys, because for 30 years of my life, I didn't really believe in God. I did not talk to him. I did not love him, and things were dark in my life. There were some very nasty things going on. And I just got to a point in my life where I'm like, there's got to be something else out here. I see people operating in joy and being successful and helping each other out, and I'm waiting for them to help me, and nothing's happening. Well, the problem is you're leaning on other people. You're not leaning on God when you take on that assumption. I'm going to learn to speak, I promise. You're leaning on other people, and we're all fallen people. We all sin. However, God is completely void of sin. He's taken that sin away from us and put it all on the arms of Jesus Christ, who has risen from the dead so that we can be wiped clean and have a clean slate when we get to heaven. But we have to choose to love him and accept him the way God has, the way that God has intended. And so things are not going to work in our favor if we don't choose to love God back. Bad things will still happen, and that is what Satan does. He wants to steal your joy. He wants to take those bad things away. But if we see God through that, then in the end, God is the only one who wins, and Satan is banished. And I want you all to live victoriously, and I want to pray for you if you are struggling mightily. I am personally going through a lot of struggle right now, but I continue to lean on God, and I know that good things are coming. And I don't want to stress about the things I can't control. And instead of me trying to do it myself, I do it all with God. And I just want to share that with you. I share it in my videos every day, what he means to me, because I just never want to stop chasing my faith, never want to stop chasing God. I mean, there are storm chasers that don't stop chasing, and I appreciate what they do to help out the community, the weather community, and working on keeping people safe. But really, in the end, there's none of that if it's not God. If there's no God, there's no anything else, in my opinion. So wanted to share that goodness with you all, and I'm happy to pray for you. And I really, really hope that you are continuing to be safe, that you're taking the weather seriously, and that you understand that sometimes things can happen on a dime, and there's really not much time to prepare. So again, I really don't want to overhype and scare folks. I just want you to understand that things do change quickly in the weather world, and we need to be on our toes for it. So I hope you have a blessed day, and I'll chat with you again tomorrow morning. God bless you.